Hello, friend. Welcome to Midnight Christian Radio. Thank you for finding your way here tonight. I know it's late. I know you're tired. And I'm guessing there's something weighing on your mind. Something you don't talk about much. Something that feels too painful to put into words. The slow disappearance of someone who's still here. The gradual loss of a person who hasn't died. The grief of watching the love of your life become someone you don't recognize. Oh, we're going to talk about that. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm 78 years old. And 6 years ago, my wife of 52 years looked at me like I was a stranger. Not metaphorically, not in some poetic sense. She literally didn't know who I was. Looked at me with fear in her eyes, asked me what I was doing in her house, called for help because there was a strange man in her bedroom. That strange man was me, her husband of 52 years, the father of her children, the man she'd woken up next to for 19,000 mornings, and she had no idea who I was. And if you're awake tonight because the person you married is slipping away, if you're watching them forget your name, your history, your love, if you're grieving someone who's still breathing, still eating breakfast across from you, but isn't really there anymore, then you're in the right place. I understand that weight, that particular kind of loneliness, that exhaustion that comes from caring for someone who doesn't remember that you care. It's brutal. I won't pretend it's not. But it's also something we can look at honestly, something we can sit with, something we can maybe slowly find some kind of peace with. There's a lamp on my desk, same one as always, brass base, green glass shade. It's been burning all night. Will keep burning until morning comes. Sarah bought that lamp 37 years ago, found it at an estate sale. Said it reminded her of her grandmother's house. She polished the brass herself, replaced the wiring, picked out that green shade. Every time I turn it on, I think of her. The her that was, the her that knew me. The her that's gone now, even though her body is still alive in a care facility 20 minutes from here. I visit her every Tuesday and Thursday, have for 3 years now. She never knows I'm coming, never remembers I was there. Sometimes she's pleasant, sometimes she's confused. Sometimes she thinks I'm her father, sometimes she's afraid of me, but I keep going. Not because she knows me, but because I know her, or knew her, or something. I'm still figuring out what love means when the person you love doesn't exist anymore in any form you recognize. It started small. That's what nobody tells you. It doesn't start with them forgetting your name. It starts with car keys, with missed appointments, with asking the same question 3 times in an hour. Sarah was 62 when I first noticed. We were at the grocery store. She stood in the cereal aisle for 10 minutes. Just stood there, staring at the boxes. I walked up and asked if she was okay. She looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Blank. Lost. She said, "I don't remember what we eat for breakfast." I laughed. Thought she was joking. But she wasn't joking. She genuinely couldn't remember. Couldn't remember that we'd eaten Cheerios every morning for 30 years. Well, couldn't remember our routine, our life. I told her Cheerios. She nodded. Put a box in the cart, and we went home. And I didn't think about it again. Not really. Not in a serious way. Because it was just one moment. One small slip. Everyone forgets things. Everyone has moments, right? That's what I told myself for months, as the moments started happening more often, as she started leaving the stove on, forgetting to turn off the water, losing track of what day it was. I made excuses, because knowing meant facing something I wasn't ready to face. So I pretended. We both pretended. For almost a year. Until the day she got lost. She'd driven to the pharmacy, 5 minutes from our house, a route she'd driven 1,000 times. She left at 2 in the afternoon. By 4, she wasn't home. I called her cell phone. No answer. I called again. And again. At 5:30, the police called me. They'd found her 20 miles away, sitting in her car in a parking lot, crying. She didn't know where she was, didn't know how she got there, didn't know how to get home. The officer said she kept saying she was lost, that she needed to find her house, that her husband would be worried. When I got there, she looked so small, so frightened, so unlike the woman I'd known for 50 years. Home. And on the drive back, she held my home. And on the drive back, she held my hand, tight, like a child. And I knew, really knew, that something was deeply wrong. We went to the doctor the next week, started with our regular physician. He did some basic tests, memory tests, cognitive tests, asked her to remember 3 words, asked her to draw a clock. She couldn't do it, couldn't remember the words after 5 minutes. Drew the clock with all the numbers on one side. He referred us to a neurologist. The neurologist did more tests, brain scans, blood work, more memory assessments. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in November, he sat us down in his office and said the word. Alzheimer's, early onset, aggressive progression. He used a lot of other words too, medical terms, percentages, treatment options. But all I heard was Alzheimer's. Sarah sat next to me, holding my hand. And I don't know if she understood what he was saying. Don't know if she grasped what it meant. She just nodded, squeezed my hand, and asked when we could go home. The first year wasn't terrible. She was still mostly herself, still remembered me, still knew our children, still had moments of clarity where she was completely present. We started her on medication. It didn't stop the progression. Nothing stops the progression. But it slowed it down, gave us time to prepare, a time to have conversations while she could still have them, time to say things that needed to be said. We talked about what she wanted, where she wanted to be when it got worse, who should make decisions, what kind of care. She was so brave about it, so practical. She made lists, wrote down instructions for me, how to work the washing machine, where she kept the bills, who to call for what, like she was going on a trip. And in a way, I suppose she was. A trip she wasn't coming back from. But here's the thing, and this is important. Even though we talked about it, even though we prepared, even though I thought I understood what was coming, I didn't understand, I couldn't understand. Because there's no way to prepare for what it's actually like. No way to prepare for the slow erasure of a person you love. The gradual disappearance, the loss that happens in stages, not all at once. You can't prepare for that. You can only live through it. The second year was harder. She started having trouble with simple tasks. Couldn't figure out how to use the coffee maker. Forgot how to button her shirt. Got confused about which room was which. I had to help her get dressed in the morning. Had to remind her to brush her teeth. Had to make sure she ate. She started asking the same questions over and over. What day is it? Where are we going? Did the kids call? 10 times a day. 20 times. I'd answer patiently. Answer again 5 minutes later. And again. and again. The kids told me I should put her in a home, said it was too much for me, that I needed help. But I wasn't ready. Couldn't imagine her somewhere else, in some facility with strangers. So I kept her home, hired a part-time caregiver to help during the day while I ran errands. And I managed, barely, but I managed, until the night she wandered. I woke up at 2 in the morning, reached for her. She wasn't there. I got up, called her name, no answer, checked the bathroom, empty, checked the kitchen, empty. The front door was open, and Sarah was gone. I ran outside in my pajamas, barefoot, calling her name. It was January, cold. She was wearing a nightgown, no coat, no shoes. I found her 3 houses down, standing in a neighbor's yard, shivering, confused. She didn't know how she got there, didn't know why she left, didn't know who I was when I approached her. She was afraid of me, backed away. I had to call the neighbor to help. Had to have a woman she didn't know convince her it was okay, that I was safe, that I was taking her home. That night I knew I couldn't do this anymore, not safely, not in a way that kept her protected. The next week, I started looking at memory care facilities, visited 5 different places. They all seemed terrible, sterile, institutional, not home, but one was better than the others, smaller, warmer, staff that seemed to actually care. I put down a deposit, filled out the paperwork, set a move-in date, and then I had to tell Sarah, except I couldn't tell her, because she wouldn't understand, wouldn't remember, would be confused and scared, so I just did it. On a Tuesday morning, told her we were going for a drive. She liked drives, drove to the facility, walked her inside, into a room that was supposed to be hers now, a room I'd tried to make familiar, her favorite blanket on the bed, photos on the wall, her lamp, the one that's now on my desk. She looked around, looked at me, and said, "Is this a hotel?" "Something like that," I said, because I couldn't say what it really was, couldn't say, "This is where you live now, because I can't take care of you anymore, because I'm failing you." I stayed with her that first day, all day, until dinner. The staff encouraged me to leave, said it would be easier if I didn't drag it out, that she'd settle in better if I just went. So I kissed her goodbye, told her I'd see her soon. She smiled, said okay, and I walked out, got in my car. We just went in. The house felt wrong. Too quiet went in. The house felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still, like something essential had been removed. I walked through the rooms, touched her things, her coffee mug in the kitchen, her reading glasses on the side table, her slippers by the bed, everything exactly where she'd left it that morning, when she still lived here, when this was still her home. I didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, feeling the emptiness next to me. 52 years I'd slept next to that woman. 52 years of her breathing beside me, of her warmth, of her presence. And now she was gone. Not dead, but gone. The next morning I went to visit her, walked into the facility, down the hall to her room. She was sitting in a chair by the window. I said hello. She looked at me. No recognition, none. I told her who I was, her husband. She nodded politely, like I was a stranger being kind. And something in me broke, something I didn't know could break, because I'd prepared for her to forget, eventually. But I thought I had more time. Thought I'd have weeks, months, maybe even another year of her knowing me. But it had only been one day in that place, and she'd forgotten me completely. I sat with her anyway, for an hour. She talked to her about nothing, about the weather, about the view from her window. She was pleasant, smiled occasionally, but there was no connection, no spark of recognition, no trace of the woman who'd known me better than I knew myself. When I left, I asked the nurse if this was normal. Was it normal for the decline to be this fast? She gave me a sympathetic look, said sometimes the change of environment accelerates things, that the confusion of a new place can make the symptoms worse, that it might improve once she adjusted, but it didn't improve. If anything, it got worse. Every visit, she was a little further gone, a little more confused, a little less Sarah. After a month, she stopped speaking in full sentences. After 3 months, she stopped speaking much at all. After 6 months, she stopped looking at me when I entered the room. And I kept visiting, twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork. I'd sit with her, hold her hand, tell her about my day, even though she didn't respond, even though she didn't know who I was, even though I wasn't sure she even knew I was there. I'd sit with her, because what else could I do? People asked me why I bothered, why I kept going when she didn't know me, when she didn't remember my visits 5 minutes after I left. What was the point? And I didn't have a good answer, just that I had to, that somewhere in that shell of a person was the woman I'd loved for 52 years. And even if she didn't know me, I knew her, or I knew who she used to be, and that had to be enough. There was a woman at my church. Her name was Patricia. Patricia's husband had Alzheimer's too. He'd been in a facility for 7 years. She visited him every single day for 7 years, even though he hadn't recognized her in 5. I asked her once how she did it, how she kept going, how she kept visiting, how she kept loving someone who didn't love her back anymore. She looked at me with this calm expression, and she said, "He loved me for 40 years. I can love him through this." At the time, I thought that was beautiful, noble, the kind of love everyone should aspire to. But now, 3 years into my own visits, I understand it differently. It's not beautiful, it's not noble, it's just what you do, because the alternative is to stop, to let them disappear alone, to pretend they're already gone. And I can't do that, even on the days when she doesn't look at me, even on the days when she's agitated and the staff asks me to leave because my presence upsets her, even on the days when I drive home in tears because the woman I love is gone and there's nothing I can do to bring her back. I keep going, not because it helps her. I'm not sure it does, but because I need to, because stopping would feel like abandonment, like giving up, like saying she doesn't matter anymore because she doesn't know I'm there. And she does matter, even diminished, even confused, even transformed into someone I don't recognize. She matters. The clock on the wall says it's almost 2. I've been awake a long time tonight, sitting here with these memories, with this weight, thinking about Sarah, about who she was, about who she is now, about the distance between those two people, a distance I can't bridge, can't fix, can't even fully understand. I was thinking about the last real conversation we had, before the Alzheimer's took her completely, before she stopped being able to form coherent thoughts. It was maybe 2 years after the diagnosis. She was having a good day. One of those increasingly rare days where she was mostly present, mostly herself. We were sitting in the backyard, drinking coffee, watching the birds, and she turned to me and said, "I'm scared." Just that. 2 words, but they carried everything. All the fear she'd been holding, all the awareness of what was coming, all the terror of losing herself. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who's watching their own mind disappear? So I just held her hand and she said, "I don't want to forget you." And I said, "I know." And she said, "Promise me you won't forget me, even when I forget you. Promise me you'll remember who I was." And I promised. Of course, I promised. How could I not promise? But here's the thing, and this is what keeps me up at night. I'm starting to forget. Not big things, not yet, but small things. The exact sound of her laugh, the way she used to hum while she cooked, the face she made when she was concentrating. Little details that used to be so familiar I didn't even think about them. They're fading, becoming less sharp, less clear, and I'm terrified. Terrified that one day I'll forget who she really was, that the woman in the facility, confused and diminished, will become the only version of Sarah I can clearly remember. Disease took her mind. And again, when my disease took her mind, and again, when my own aging memory lets go of who she used to be. That's the thing nobody tells you about this disease. It doesn't just steal the person you love. It threatens to steal your memories of them too. Because how do you hold on to someone who's been erased? How do you keep them vivid and real when the living version of them bears no resemblance to who they were? I try. I look at old photos. I read old letters. I tell stories about her to our children. But it's like trying to hold water in my hands. The tighter I grip, the more it slips away. There's more to say, more to work through, more peace to find. But for now, just know this. If you're watching someone you love disappear, you're not alone in this. Others have walked this road. Others are walking it now. And there's a way through. Not over, not around, but through. The night is long, but we'll make it through together. The air feels different now. Heavier, maybe. Or maybe I've just been sitting with this weight long enough to feel every ounce of it. Still here. Still thinking about Sarah. About loss that doesn't look like death. About grief that has no end date. I was thinking about something a hospice nurse told me once. This was years ago, when my mother was dying, before Sarah got sick, before I understood what it meant to grieve someone who's still alive. The nurse said that death is easier than dementia. Easier. I was offended when she said it. Thought it was a terrible thing to say. Disrespectful to people who were actually dying. But now I understand what she meant. Death is final. It's brutal. It's painful. It's devastating. But it's final. You grieve. You move through the stages. You eventually find a way to live with the loss. But dementia is death in slow motion. It's grieving someone who's still at the breakfast table, still breathing, still physically present, but absent in every way that matters. And there's no funeral, no closure, no moment where you can say, "It's over now, she's at peace," because it's never over. It just keeps going, day after day, year after year. This suspended state between life and death, where you're not a widower, but you're not really a husband anymore either. You're something in between, something without a name. I remember the first time someone asked me how my wife was doing. This was maybe 6 months after I'd moved her to the facility. An old friend I hadn't seen in a while, he said, "How's Sarah?" And I didn't know how to answer. Is she alive? Yes. Is she well? No. Is she suffering? I don't know. Does she know she exists? Unclear. I said, "She's the same," which was a lie. She wasn't the same. She was worse. She was disappearing a little more every day. But how do you explain that to someone who's just making polite conversation? How do you say, "My wife is alive, but the person she was is gone, and I'm grieving her every day even though she's still breathing"? You don't. You just say, "She's the same." And you change the subject. People don't know what to do with this kind of loss. They know how to respond to death. They bring casseroles. They send cards. They say, "I'm sorry for your loss." But nobody brings casseroles when your wife has Alzheimer's. Nobody sends sympathy cards. Nobody says they're sorry because she's not dead. So what are they sorry for? The loss of who she was, the burden of caring for who she is now, the slow torture of watching her fade. It's too complicated, too uncomfortable. So people just don't say anything. They stop asking, stop inviting you to things, stop treating you like someone who's going through something hard, and you disappear too. Not like Sarah, but in your own way. You become invisible, forgotten, alone in a way that's different from widowhood, but just as isolating. Maybe more isolating, because at least widows have a community, support groups, acknowledgement of their loss. But what do you call yourself when you're married to someone who doesn't know you're married to them? When you wear a wedding ring but sleep alone? When you're legally bound to someone who's mentally untethered? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. The first year after I moved Sarah to the facility was the hardest. Harder than the diagnosis. Harder than watching her decline. Harder than the night she wandered. Because at least when she was home, I had a purpose. I was her caregiver, her protector, the person responsible for keeping her safe. But once she was in the facility, I wasn't that anymore. The staff did everything. Fed her, bathed her, dressed her, medicated her, kept her safe. I was just a visitor, 2 times a week for an hour each time. That was my role now. And the rest of the time, I was nothing, nobody. A man living alone in a house that was too big, too quiet, too full of memories. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd spent 2 years organizing my entire life around Sarah's needs, her schedule, her care, her safety, and suddenly I had all this time. Empty time. Time to fill with what? I tried staying busy, took up woodworking, started going to the gym, volunteered at church, but it all felt hollow. Like I was just moving through the motions, filling hours, avoiding the real thing. The real thing being I was alone, and more alone than I'd ever been in my life. And I didn't know how to be alone. I'd been married since I was 23 years old. 52 years I'd never lived alone, never eaten dinner alone, never gone to bed alone, not in 5 decades. And now, at 72 years old, I was learning how to be single. Except I wasn't single. I was married to a woman who didn't know I existed. It was a strange kind of limbo. Too married to move on, too alone to stay the same. I thought about dating, and then I'd feel guilty. Terrible. And then I'd feel guilty. Terrible, crushing guilt. Because Sarah was still alive, still my wife, still the woman I'd vowed to love in sickness and in health. How could I even think about someone else? But the nights were so long, the house was so empty, and I was so tired of being alone. I never told anyone about those thoughts, not my children, not my friends, not my pastor. I was too ashamed. But they were there, are there. I'm being honest with you tonight in a way I can't be honest in daylight, in a way I can't be honest with people who know me, who would judge me, who would think less of me, but you don't know me. And maybe that's why I can tell you this, that loving someone with Alzheimer's is the loneliest thing I've ever done. That sometimes I wish she had just died, quick and clean, so I could grieve properly and move on. I know that's terrible to say. I know it makes me sound like a monster, but it's true. And I think if other people in my situation were honest, they'd say the same thing. Not because we don't love them, but because loving someone who's gone while they're still alive is a special kind of torture. And sometimes you just want it to be over. There was a man in my support group. Yes, I went to a support group for about 6 months. Eventually stopped because it was too depressing. Something in group one night that everyone was talking about. And George said something in group one night that everyone gasped at. He said, "I'm waiting for her to die." Just like that. Flat. Honest. The group leader tried to soften it, tried to reframe it as waiting for her to be at peace or some gentler version. But George shook his head. He said, "No, I'm waiting for her to die." But I understood. God help me, but I understood. God help me, I understood exactly what he meant, because he was right. What Sarah has now isn't life. Not really. She exists, she breathes, she occupies space, but she's not alive in any meaningful sense. She doesn't think, doesn't feel, doesn't experience joy or sorrow or anything. She just is. And I'm trapped in this holding pattern, visiting someone who isn't there, caring for someone who doesn't know I care, waiting for an end that could be years away. George's wife died 4 months after that meeting. I saw him at her funeral. He looked lighter, not happy, but lighter, like a weight had been lifted. He came up to me after the service and said, "I know it's wrong to feel this way, but I'm relieved." And I told him it wasn't wrong. That relief is a valid response to the end of suffering, his suffering and hers, that he'd been grieving for years already, that her death was just the final chapter of a long, painful story. He nodded, looked like he might cry, and he said, "I hope when it's your turn, you feel the same way." I think about that conversation sometimes. Wonder if I will feel relief when Sarah dies, or if I'll feel something else. Guilt, maybe, or regret, or just emptiness. I don't know. Can't know until it happens. But I think George was probably right. I think I'll feel relief. And I think I'll feel guilty about the relief. And both of those things will be okay. The clock says it's almost 3. That deep, heavy part of night, when everything feels harder, heavier, more honest. I've been thinking about the last time Sarah said my name, really said it, addressed me as me. It was about a year after the diagnosis. We were sitting on the couch, watching TV, some show we used to watch together. She turned to me and said, "Robert." Just my name, but it was her, fully her. Won't remember soon, but I want you to won't remember soon. But I want you to know that even when I don't remember, it's still true. I still love you. Somewhere. Somehow. And then she went back to watching TV, like she hadn't just said the most profound thing she'd ever say to me. like she hadn't just given me the only comfort I'd have for the next 6 years. That memory is what I hold on to. When I visit her and she looks through me like I'm not there. When she's agitated and the staff has to calm her down. When I drive home alone to our empty house. I remember that moment. I still love you. Somewhere. Somehow. And I choose to believe it's true. Even though there's no evidence. Even though she shows no sign of knowing me or caring about me or feeling anything toward me. I choose to believe that somewhere, deep in whatever's left of her mind, there's still love. Maybe that's delusional. Maybe I'm just clinging to something that isn't there anymore. But it's what I have, and I'm keeping it. There's a woman I see at the facility sometimes. Her husband is there too. Different wing, different stage of progression. But I see her in the hallways, in the parking lot, at the front desk signing in. We've never spoken. But there's this look we exchange, this recognition, like we're members of the same terrible club, not the club nobody wants to join, the club of people who love someone who's disappearing. I see it in her eyes, the same exhaustion I feel, the same grief, the same question of how much longer can I do this, and I see her see it in mine, and we nod, just a small nod, an acknowledgement. You too. Me too. We're both still here. That silent exchange has meant more to me than any words of comfort from people who don't understand. More than any well-meaning advice from people who haven't walked this road. Because she knows. She's living it too. And somehow that helps. Knowing I'm not the only one. Knowing this terrible thing isn't unique to me. Knowing other people are carrying the same weight and somehow still getting up every morning, it helps. Not a lot, but enough. I tried praying about this a lot. In the beginning, I prayed for healing, begged God to stop the progression, to give us a miracle, to let Sarah stay Sarah. But the progression didn't stop. So I prayed for acceptance, for peace, for the strength to endure what I couldn't change. And I got nothing. No peace, no strength, no sense of God's presence or comfort, just silence. The same silence I was experiencing everywhere else in my life. I stopped praying after a while. Couldn't see the point. Felt like I was talking to an empty room. My pastor told me that was normal, that suffering can make prayer feel impossible, that God understands, that I should just keep showing up even if it feels empty. But I couldn't, didn't have the energy, was using all my energy just to survive, to get through each day, to keep visiting Sarah even though every visit broke my heart. I had nothing left for prayer, nothing left for God. And honestly, I was angry at God anyway. Angry that he'd let this happen. That he'd created a disease that steals people from the inside out. That he'd given me 52 beautiful years with Sarah just to take her away in the cruelest possible fashion. Why? What kind of God does that? I still don't have an answer to that question. Still don't understand why some people die quickly and others fade slowly. Why some families are spared this particular horror and others aren't. It seems random, cruel, senseless. But I'm starting to think that maybe that's the point. Maybe there is no reason, no grand plan, no lesson to be learned. Maybe sometimes terrible things just happen. And we have to find a way to live through them anyway. Not because they mean something, but because we're still alive and have no choice but to keep going. I don't know if that's faith or just stubbornness, but it's what I've got. We'll keep talking. There's more to say, more to work through, more to understand. But for now, rest in this. You're not alone in this grief. Others are loving someone who's slipping away. Others are visiting someone who doesn't know they're being visited. And we're all just trying to figure out what love means when the person we love doesn't exist anymore. The night is still long, but we're not through it yet. The darkness feels lighter now, not gone, not even close, but lighter. Like maybe I've carried it long enough that I'm getting stronger. Or maybe it's getting less heavy. I don't know which. Still here. Still thinking about what it means to love someone who's forgotten you. Still trying to understand what I'm supposed to do with all this grief. I've been thinking about identity, about who we are when the person who knew us best doesn't know us at all. Sarah knew me better than anyone, better than my parents, better than my children, better than I knew myself sometimes. She knew my tells, my moods, the way I got quiet when I was worried, the way I joked when I was uncomfortable, the way I needed space when I was overwhelmed. She could read me like a book she'd read 1,000 times, and I could read her the same way. We had our own language, our own shorthand, 52 years of shared history that meant we could communicate in glances and half sentences. That's what a long marriage is. Not just love, but deep, intricate knowledge of another person. And when that person forgets you, you lose more than a relationship. You lose a witness, the person who saw your whole life, who remembered who you used to be, who could tell the stories you'd forgotten. Nobody else has that. Nobody else knows the full version of me, the young me, the middle-aged me. It's the me that existed before I became just the old man whose wife has Alzheimer's. That version of me only existed in Sarah's memory, and now it doesn't exist anywhere. I was talking to my daughter about this once. She said, "But I remember you, Dad. I know who you are." And I said, "You know who I've been since you were born, but you don't know who I was before. You don't know the me that Sarah knew." She was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "Tell me. Tell me the stories. Tell me who you were." And I tried. I really tried. But the stories felt flat, without Sarah there to correct me, to add the details I forgot, to say, "No, that's not how it happened," or "You're leaving out the best part." The stories need her to be whole, and without her, they're just fragments, pieces of a past that's fading along with her memory. There's a photo on my desk, black and white, taken at our wedding. Sarah's 21 years old in it. I'm 23. We look impossibly young, impossibly happy, impossibly confident that love is enough, that we'll figure everything out, that nothing bad will ever happen to us. I look at that photo sometimes and wonder what I'd tell those kids if I could. Would I tell them what's coming? Would I warn them about the Alzheimer's? Would I tell them to appreciate every single moment because someday she won't remember any of it? I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't tell them anything. Maybe I'd let them have those 52 years of not knowing, as of just loving each other, of building a life together without the shadow of what's coming hanging over everything. Maybe ignorance was a gift. The last time I visited Sarah, something different happened. I walked into her room like I always do. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Same routine for 3 years. She was sitting in her chair by the window, staring out at nothing. I sat down next to her, said hello. No response. I took her hand. She didn't pull away. That was good. Sometimes she pulls away. Or I started talking, like I always do, telling her about my week, about the weather, about nothing and everything. She wasn't looking at me, but then very slowly she turned her head, looked at me, really looked at me. And for just a second, I saw something. A flicker, a spark, something that looked almost like recognition. Her mouth moved like she was trying to say something. I leaned closer, waited, and she said very quietly, "I know you." 3 words. "I know you." My heart stopped. I said, "Yes, yes you do. I'm Robert. I'm your husband." She kept looking at me, and I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was the breakthrough. Maybe she was coming back. But then she looked away, back to the window. And when I asked if she knew who I was, there was nothing. The moment was gone. I asked the nurse about it when I was leaving. Was that real? Did she actually recognize me? The nurse gave me a sympathetic smile. She said sometimes there are flickers, brief moments of clarity, but they don't mean anything. It's not her coming back. It's just neurons firing randomly, a trick of a deteriorating brain. Don't read too much into it, she said. But how can I not read into it? How can I not hold on to those 3 words like they're the most precious thing I've ever heard? I know you. Even if it wasn't real, even if it was just random firing, even if she didn't actually know me. She said it, and for 1 second I felt seen again. There was a man I knew through church. His name was Tom. Tom's father had dementia. Lived with Tom for years. Eventually got so bad Tom had to put him in a facility. And Tom told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "My father stopped being my father years before he died. The person I knew was gone. But I kept taking care of the shell that was left. And I never knew if I was doing it for him or for me." I understood what he meant. I don't know if my visits help Sarah. I don't know if she experiences them in any meaningful way. If my presence brings her comfort, or if it's just more stimulation in a world that's already too confusing. I like to think it helps. Like to think that on some level, even if she doesn't know who I am, she knows someone is there, someone is showing up, someone cares. But I don't really know. What I do know is that the visits help me. They give me structure, purpose, a way to still be her husband, even though she's not my wife anymore in any traditional sense. I'm performing marriage. I'm going through the motions, showing up, being faithful, being present, even though there's no reciprocation, no acknowledgement, no reward. And maybe that's what real love is, not the easy love of the good years, but the hard love of the impossible years. The love that keeps showing up when there's no reason to, when it costs everything and gives nothing back. My pastor would say, that's Christ-like love. Sacrificial, unearned, given freely without expectation of return. And maybe he's right. Maybe this is teaching me something about love I never would have learned otherwise. But honestly, I'd rather have Sarah back. I'd rather have the easy love, the mutual love, the love where both people know they're loved. This hard love is killing me, slowly, but killing me nonetheless. I'm tired, so tired. Tired of visiting someone who doesn't know I'm visiting. Tired of going home alone. Tired of this endless, waiting for an end that might not come for years. Tired of being strong, of being faithful, of being good. I just want to rest, but I can't because she's still alive. And as long as she's alive, I have to keep going. The clock says it's almost 4, the darkest part of night, before any hint of dawn, when everything feels impossible, when the weight of continuing feels like more than I can carry. But I'm still here, still breathing, still carrying it. Because what choice do I have? I was reading something the other day, an article about Alzheimer's and marriage. It said that many spouses of Alzheimer's patients experience ambiguous loss, loss without closure, grief without an end. The person is gone, but they're still there. They're absent, but present. Dead in every way that matters, but still technically alive. And your brain doesn't know how to process that, doesn't know whether to grieve or hope, whether to hold on or let go, whether you're a caregiver or a widower or something in between. Ambiguous loss. That's what this is. And the article said it's one of the most difficult forms of grief to navigate because there are no rituals for it, no funeral, no clear ending, no permission to move on, just this endless, ambiguous middle. I felt seen when I read that. Felt like someone finally understood what I've been living, what I've been unable to explain. But I also felt hopeless, because if this is one of the hardest forms of grief, and I'm only 3 years in, and Sarah could live for years more, it's eventually somehow this will end. And eventually somehow this will end. And when it does, I'll finally be able to grieve properly, to have a funeral, to say goodbye, to close this chapter and start figuring out what comes next. But until then, I'm stuck in this limbo, loving someone who can't love me back, being faithful to someone who doesn't know I exist, honoring vows to someone who doesn't remember we made them, and trying to find meaning in that, trying to believe it matters, trying to believe I'm doing the right thing. Most days, I'm not sure I am. Most days, I wonder if I'm just prolonging my own suffering for no good reason. But I keep going anyway, because that's what you do when you love someone, even when they're gone, even when they don't know you love them. In passing, we're not there yet, but we're passing. We're not there yet, but we're close. Stay with me. There's more to say, more to understand, more peace to find. The night is almost over. The darkness is changing now. Not gone, but different. Thinner, like the night is finally starting to let go. I've been awake all night, sitting here with these memories, with this weight that I carry every day, thinking about Sarah, about what she was, about what she is now, about what happens when those two things are so far apart they don't even seem like the same person. I've been thinking about endings, about how we prepare for them, how we face them, how we find peace with them. Sarah and I used to talk about death sometimes, not in a morbid way, just in that practical way couples do when they're getting older, when friends start dying, when you realize you're closer to the end than the beginning. She'd say things like, "When I die, don't spend a fortune on the funeral," or "Make sure you sell the house and move somewhere smaller," or "Promise me you'll find someone else. Don't be alone." Normal end-of-life planning conversations. But we never talked about this. Never talked about what happens if one of us loses their mind before their body. Never talked about dementia or Alzheimer's or what we'd want if we couldn't make our own decisions anymore. We should have, but we didn't, because like most people, we thought we had time, thought we'd figure it out later, thought it wouldn't happen to us. And then it did, and I had to make all the decisions alone. Move her to a facility, authorized medications, sign DNR orders, must choose what kind of care she'd receive when she reached the end, all alone, without her input, without her guidance, without knowing if I was doing what she would have wanted. That's been one of the hardest parts, not knowing if I'm honoring her wishes, because I never knew what her wishes were. I made the best guesses I could, tried to think about what she valued, what she would have chosen, what kind of end she would have wanted. But I'll never know if I got it right. Never know if she would have wanted to be in a facility or if she would have preferred to stay home even if it wasn't safe. Never know if she would have wanted aggressive intervention when her time comes or if she would have wanted to just slip away peacefully. I'm making these decisions for someone who can't speak for herself and carrying the weight of not knowing if I'm doing right by her. The lamp on my desk has been burning all night, like it always does, steady, faithful, doing what it was made to do. Sarah bought this lamp. I think I mentioned that earlier. Found it at an estate sale, polished it up, made it beautiful. She had a gift for that, taking broken things and making them whole again. Old furniture, thrift store clothes, people. She did it with me. I was a mess when we met, 23 years old, directionless, drinking too much, angry at the world, and she saw something in me. Something I didn't see in myself. She believed I could be better, and somehow her believing it made it possible. I stopped drinking, got serious about work, became the kind of man worth building a life with, not because I was strong, but because she believed I could be. That's who she was, a person who saw potential in broken things, who believed in restoration, who had the patience to polish brass until it shone. And now she's the broken thing, and I can't fix her, can't restore her, can't make her whole again. No amount of patience or love or faithfulness will bring her back. And that's the hardest truth I've ever had to accept, that some things can't be fixed, some losses can't be recovered. Some people, once they're gone, are just gone. Even if they're still breathing, there's a bird starting to sing outside, just one, testing its voice in the pre-dawn dark. Soon there'll be more, then the whole chorus, then full daylight. It happens every morning, that progression from silence to sound to light. Reliable, predictable. No matter how long the night, morning always comes. I've been thinking about what comes next, after Sarah dies, after this long goodbye finally ends, after I can start grieving properly instead of this suspended animation I'm living in now. What comes next? I don't know. People tell me I'll rebuild, that I'll find new purpose, maybe even find new love. I'm 78 years old. Sarah's 76. We've been married 52 years. I don't want new love. I want my wife back, but I can't have that. So I'll have to figure out what I want instead. Maybe that's peace. Maybe that's just getting through each day without this crushing weight. Maybe that's learning to remember her without it breaking me. I don't know. All I know is I'm tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of being faithful. Tired of this slow grief that has no end. But I'm still here. Still showing up. Still visiting on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Still holding her hand even though she doesn't know whose hand she's holding. Still loving her. In whatever way love looks like now. The nurse at the facility told me something a few months ago. She said, the person with Alzheimer's loses their past, but the caregiver loses their future. She was right. Sarah has lost everything she was, all her memories, all her knowledge, all her relationships. But I've lost everything I thought we'd be. The retirement we planned, the travel, the grandchildren growing up, the quiet golden years of just being together. All of that's gone, stolen by this disease. And I'm left here in this strange present. Not who I was, not who I thought I'd be. Just someone trying to figure out how to exist in this reality I never wanted. But here's what I'm learning, slowly, painfully. That love isn't just the good parts. It's not just the 52 years of knowing each other, the inside jokes, the shared dreams, the partnership. Love is also this. It's the showing up when there's no reward, the faithfulness when there's no recognition, the keeping of vows when the person you made them with doesn't remember making them. That's love too. Maybe that's the truest love. The love that costs everything and gives nothing back. The love that keeps burning even when no one sees it. The love that just is. Because that's what it does. Because there's no other choice. I don't know if Sarah knows I love her. Don't know if some part of her, deep down, keep loving her in whatever form that. Keep loving her in whatever form that takes now. Not the love of romance, not the love of partnership, but the love of pure presence. The love that says, I'm here. Even though you don't know I'm here. Even though it doesn't change anything. Even though it costs me everything. I'm here. And I'll keep being here until you're gone. And then I'll grieve you. Really grieve you. Finally, grieve you. And maybe then I'll be able to let you go. The window is definitely lighter now. Gray light. Pre-dawn. The kind that says morning is close even though the sun hasn't risen yet. I've been sitting here all night, working through this, working through what it means to love someone who's gone, to grieve someone who's alive, to hold on and let go at the same time. And I don't have answers, don't have neat conclusions, don't have wisdom that makes it all make sense. I just have this experience, this grief, this love that continues even when it seems pointless. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us have when we love someone. Just the choice to keep loving them, however imperfectly, however painfully, however impossibly, we keep loving them. Because that's what love does. It keeps going, even in the dark, especially in the dark. If you're listening to this because someone you love is slipping away, I want you to hear this. You're not doing it wrong. You're not failing them. You're not weak for finding this hard. This is hard. Maybe the hardest thing you'll ever do. Loving someone who doesn't know you love them. Grieving someone who hasn't died. Holding on to someone who's already gone. It's impossible. And you're doing it anyway. That's not weakness, that's strength. The kind of strength that doesn't look strong. The kind that's just endurance. Just showing up one more day. Just keeping going when everything in you wants to stop. That's the strength you have. And it's enough. You're enough. Even on the days when you don't feel like it. Even on the days when you want to give up. Even on the days when you wonder what the point is. You're enough. The birds are singing louder now. More of them. The dawn chorus building. And the window is bright enough that I can turn off this lamp. Can let the natural light be enough. The lamp that Sarah found, that Sarah polished, that Sarah loved. The lamp that's been burning all night. Faithful, constant, just doing what it was made to do. Like love, like me. Like all of us who keep showing up for people who don't know we're showing up. We just keep burning until we can't burn anymore. And then we rest. The night is over. Morning is here. And I'm still here too. Still loving Sarah. Still grieving Sarah. But still holding space for someone who doesn't know their space being held. And that's okay. That's enough. That's love. You're not alone in this. Others are walking this same road. Others are loving people who've forgotten them. Others are grieving losses that have no end date. And we're all just doing our best, showing up, being faithful, keeping our vows even when the person we made them with can't keep theirs. That's what we do. That's all we can do. And it matters. Over. Another night of sitting with this over. Another night of sitting with this, of carrying this, of being with this impossible grief. And I made it through. We made it through together. And tonight, when the darkness comes again, we'll make it through again. One night at a time. One visit at a time. One moment of love at a time. Until there are no more moments. And then we'll finally rest. But until then, we keep going. We keep loving. We keep showing up. Because that's what love does. It endures. Even in the dark. Especially in the dark. And that's enough.